Great. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our webinar with Ready Room called From Chaos to Confidence, How to Streamline Your Inspection Process with the Right Tools. My name is Tracy Pozadowski, and I'm responsible for marketing initiatives at Ready Room. And I'm pleased to be joined today with Denise Lacey, who's co-founder of Ready Room, and Amnon Eylath, head of quality from Alkeus Pharmaceuticals. Just to get some housekeeping things out of the way first, welcome, first of all, and feel free to chat amongst each other with the other participants that are in the webinar. The chat is open, so feel free to have conversations amongst yourselves. If you have questions, there's a Q&A button. I'll moderate the questions as they come in, and we will save them until the end. And any questions that we might not get to within this webinar, we will be sending out. There will be a recording of the webinar that I will share with everybody after the event. And we'll pull together, like I say, the Q&A, and we'll just do a quick summary of the webinar as well. And we will go from there. So you'll hear from us after the webinar with more of these materials. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Denise to kick us off.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Denise Lacey. I am the co-founder of Ready Room, and we are very delighted to have Amnon Eylath with us today. Amnon is a quality leader and an auditor who's experienced in the life cycle of small molecule and biological drug development, from discovery through non-clinical and tox studies, clinical trials, process and method development, GMP manufacturing, validation, regulatory inspections, submissions, and commercial product approvals. He has direct experience with process development, validation, and QA/QC oversight for cell therapies and also for therapeutic monoclonal antibodies. He's established and managed GXP quality systems for small molecule cell therapy and biotech companies. He's implemented and led cross-functional continuous improvement and gap remediation initiatives and projects. He's also a Lean Six Sigma Black Belt and the past president of the New England Parenteral Drug Association chapter. Amnon is a thought leader on the application of phase-appropriate GMP to drug development and manufacturing, who's presented seminars and training, as well as presented on sterilization technology to CBER and CDER. And so we are very happy to have him with us today to talk about how to streamline our inspection processes.
Well, thank you, Denise. Thanks for the introduction. Hello, everybody. And happy to be here. I've been involved in supporting, participating, representing, or leading inspections, starting with my experience at Amgen in the 90s and more recently in smaller companies, startup companies, but also in larger companies such as Genzyme and Lilly. And the talk today is really about the what I call the legacy old school way of hosting, managing inspection documentation, the back room, which I also call it the Ready Room, but since Ready Room is an app, let's call it the back room, and really the benefits of that, because in more than one company, I've seen the implication of using electronic systems and the benefits out of that. So let's just get started, please. And I just at first also just want to, thank my colleagues and the people here at Alkeus that helped support our inspections, both in paper-based system and the electronic system mock inspections in the most recent couple of years, actually. And without further ado, we'll go forward. So this is how we all used to do it, and many of us do, as of myself. Very labor intensive, gathering documents, organizing them, filing them, creating file folders, numbering, cross-referencing, and during the inspection, pulling out documents folders, two folders, one for the investigator inspector and one for the back room and for archiving, and then doing all of that, making sure you have the right documents, sometimes sending out the wrong documents or incomplete folders because there are people running around with paperwork, printing, printers that don't work, etc. And then ultimately you have to clean that all up, reorganize, resort, and shred a lot of paper too. So it's the common experience that I had for many years. And even in larger places with a lot of support, it's still a lot of manual work and very challenging. So, in practice, the what I would call the paper-based method, as we can see here, box loads of documents, bringing things in and cleaning things up afterwards, very labor intensive. So the challenge is using the manual paper-based backroom. It's time, space, very resource intensive, starting with the preparations to the inspections or audit. And again, we're talking about hosting audits. Many companies, especially large companies, do host formal internal audits from corporate auditors. Companies, also large and small, host audits for due diligence for external third parties that may be interested in merging, partnering, or acquiring a company, not just inspections by health authorities such as FDA and EMA representatives, Anvisa, PMDA from Japan, etc. It takes space. If you don't have room, it's a real challenge. And even with room, you need a big room, and everything needs to be staged. Very inefficient apps and platforms, which at the time when we started implementing, we thought was great. We used Microsoft Chat. It was great. They changed the Teams chat, and it was not so great for recording things. And ultimately, more recently, using shared documents, whether a Google document or a Word document, web document in SharePoint that people can look and the scribes can write and etc. But it is really not very efficient, and there's always the challenge of potentially losing those documents. A lot of work putting the binders together, etc. And the actual status of each document is not transparent. It has to be documented manually, either in a log, a paper log, or on something like Excel or Smartsheet, which actually I've used. And it's a very, very good application for doing things like that and managing status of tasks and documents, but it has a lag. It's not blindingly fast. And control the live scribe notes, internal hosting team, who's going to see things. In larger companies, or even small companies, but with room, we had an inspection room, we had the back room, we had the green room, we had big screens where people could sit and watch what was going on in inspection and prepare. Smaller companies may not have that space and may not have many rooms with big screens, and maybe you have only one room that's big enough to host an inspection in a tight room. So it's not a given that there's a space to do that. And if documents are requested electronically by the inspectors, which is what FDA has been typically doing, and in experience in recent years, we had to put all the documents that had been shared on a given day or at the end of the inspection onto thumb drives, which turns out took hours. And then again, you have to make sure if there be errors, defective thumb drive, and that's very difficult to manage. Once you've let go of that, it's gone. And a lot of companies don't even allow thumb drive access onto their people's laptops for security and antivirus purposes. So I worked at a large multinational biotech company, and we had an inspection that I actually hosted. It was a GMP inspection, and we had a whole room that was designated towards inspection hosting in this plant. It was a very large plant. It was one of the largest biotech facilities in the world at that time. And that room had two printers, two big screens, desks for people to work at. They used to bring in the SOPs and documents on, basically on a pallet, kind of dolly, in files and such, and at least half a dozen people working there to make sure that documents were getting through the system. And they were using an electronic app. And that very much impressed me because on that app on the screen, you could see like a table of all the requests for information, requests for documents. Scrolling down, there's another screen for scribe chat. It was greatly efficient. So that introduced me into that technology, and I was always on the lookout for something that also could be implemented in a small company, in a startup. So the benefits of that, you can set clear hosting team roles in the system, and the size of the hosting team is not dependent on how many people we can fit into a room or two rooms, because you can break it out into different rooms, different functions. You can host fully remote, or some people on site, some people remote. I've even had a case in a mock inspection where the leader got COVID and they had to work from home, and they managed that. There was a big screen in the boardroom, and they were managing it remotely, and it worked well. Saves a lot of time and resources not having to go to the files, pick up paper documents, or even if you're working off electronic systems or a QMS, but then printing them out. Printing them out takes time, printing out multiple copies, stamping things, copy, confidential, etc. And what was nice is that you could upload documents from an electronic app. And this maybe have different features in some of the different apps, but I'm familiar with a couple. And two, FD uses Box, a validated version of Box. They set up a folder, and in most cases, they ask people to not bring them paper documents, but send it to to that folder, and then they can open it up on their computer, their laptop, and look. And some documents will have to be paper. I mean, you have org charts, things you may want to print in large format. That it's hard to read on the screen, but most of the documents can be uploaded, and that's also a great efficiency and reduces errors. Now, here's just an example of roles, and this could vary. There could be more roles, could be less roles. Some of these roles could be combined. So if you're a very small company, typically people wear many hats. So in many cases, there's a communicator. They write down the requests, and that gets forwarded to the back room. Historically, that was on the chat and etc. Someone who assigns the requests to the appropriate subject matter experts that can all be in the electronic app. It gets fulfilled. People are getting the document, they're reviewing it, they're saying, yes, it's the right document. No, that's not the right document, or the title is misleading. Or if it's a request for information, get the person who knows the answer to describe it and enter it into the app. The reviewer makes sure that it is the right answer or the right document to the question, or it's incomplete. Maybe it says, yes, it's done, but you find that the attachment's not there. So it's much easier to figure that out looking on the screen. Then the host, who's in the inspection room, sees what's lined up, releases the documents, which are either shared on the screen by the host during the inspection or audit, or sent directly to the inspector or auditor so they can review it. Scribe continuously documenting what is going on in the inspection or audit. I prefer having two scribes in a room for backup, and if someone needs bio break or for any other reason, a technical issue with their computer. And at the same time, it's good having two independent people writing down what's happening. Some people may mishear, misunderstand. My practice is to carefully and slowly, not too slow, repeat what the request was with the inspector and say, so you requested the SOP for this and that, or policy number so-and-so, or you needed information on such and such, in a very clear way. So I found that even in small rooms, depending if you have loud air conditioning or ventilation in the room, some rooms are very good acoustically, some are so poor acoustics that you'll be sitting at a large table and literally a scribe sitting 6, 7 feet away may not be able to hear properly, especially if the inspector speaks quietly or has a heavy accent, or again, people are not, maybe English is not the first language. I've also hosted inspections where, like from Japan, PMDA, and they came with a translator, and it was very, very burdensome. Even the simplest question had to go translator, back, etc. And you can have observers, people, whether it's other people in quality or SMEs or leadership, and they can, throughout the day on their computer, or even set up a room, as I'd mentioned, for people to come and see what's going on in the inspection. So it's very good. I actually, in recent experience, got rid of the communicator role because it's hard enough finding really excellent scribes who can write things verbatim. And it turned out that by making it very clear in the inspection room that what was the question, the numbers, the comments, etc., that can be picked up by a person in the back room. So it's in a sense the communicator moved from the inspection room to having a role, and it could be more than one person again in the back room who is scanning continuously, looking at the requests, questions, comments, or the documents, and communicating that to the team. And there's also internal chat capability for some of these apps, or through whatever chat feature company wants to use. Here is an example of a visual workflow. And among the apps, some of them very tabular. I think all of them have a tabular feature, but this is a case where the Ready Room app caught my eye as the fact that I'm very visual, and color coding helps me process and understand where things are. So if I do Smartsheet, I do color coding. Something is not ready, waiting, could be bright yellow row, and then if it's in progress, green, and that's complete blue. So you can see here we have a situation where you can see exactly where the requests are in the process, and this is not actual audit or inspection data. It's dummy data, but it does show that things show up on your screen. Something is being assigned, then it gets sent to someone to fulfill. If it's a question about manufacturing, we go to a GMP person. If it's a quality question, it could go to someone from QA or from the QMS group, and then it is reviewed. Nice is you can have, again, more than one person, and you're not going to also get duplicate work or people working at cross purposes. Yes, that's the right document. And then it goes to the host review. And, the host may be tied up or caught up, but this used to be taken care of by runners who literally would run back and forth, sometimes from one floor to another, as you want to keep the inspection room maybe far away from the ready room. And now there's no more running. And it's more like just having a person waiting outside the door to, fend off people who may want to go into that conference room, take the inspectors, if they need a break, to the bathroom, or if they need to get something to drink, etc. I'm also a big proponent of having food and snacks and things in the room, which also creates a more pleasant environment for the inspector. And then ultimately it goes to inspector review. Now, if you are sharing things on screen only, that is the inspector review, but there is the opportunity to also push things to Box or some other repository that the inspectors may be using. I think that's also depending on what it is, different systems may have different compatibility, etc. But at a minimum, it's there, and then documents, you don't even have to go back to your QMS, to your SharePoint, or whatever you're using. You basically can download the documents as PDFs, and then if you have to do it manually, someone will push things into the electronic repository that is requested by the inspector or auditor. On the right, you see internal team chat, and it's scribe notes at the bottom, but typically scribe notes people like putting on full screen or half screen. If I'm in the inspection room, I typically put the scribe notes on half of my screen, and then the other half of my screen, I may put the internal chat. So in summary, basically there are multiple benefits to implementing an inspection or audit system for managing the backroom work. Staging, it's all virtual. And even if you don't have space or have to take over, the CEO's room or something like that, it can be done. It's streamlined. You can apply resources more flexibly. It's very easy getting people from shifting from one role to another because you may have a QA person who's reviewing things, but they may also be an SME. So you switch them, and now they don't even have to leave their chair. Now they're actually responding or looking for documents or responding to comments. And offsite too, you could do the whole team offsite technically if it's a remote inspection. And if you do have physical people and auditors, inspectors, then you can have a hosting team, but members of your backroom team do not have to all be on site. I recommend it. It's a great efficiency, brainstorming, talking, but as we know, many people, some companies are pretty much all remote, some are mixed, hybrid, and then people, because of snowstorm again, or illness, or sick child, or a problem with the car, may not be able to be on site, and that takes also incredible pressure off. That people know if they can't be on site, they can always get online. There's a log of all the information. You can go back and pull those documents. Is that the document that I shared? Or ask, I don't remember, what was that question? Oh, that's exactly the question. And that's why we shared this document. And then gives opportunity for improvements. You know, we should have shared that other document, or we should have gotten a different person to respond, gotten a better reply. And it's good that everything is logged, everything is tracked, everything is there. And in a sense, you have an archive of exactly what happened in a certain inspection, the communication in the inspection room, and also the internal chat and which documents were submitted when. So you can also tell, well, we want to get documents out within 15 minutes. Did we really meet that? Or was it, or why did that take 2 days? Because, oops, we forgot to progress it. What's good though is someone like a host can actually see, you know, there are these RFIs. We already talked about them in the room. I'm just going to push them through the process, and people can push things through the process. So that needs to be, done by the right people. But it does give the host, instead of the host keep saying, "Where's the runner? Where's the runner? I'm waiting for that file." They can see, this file is stuck. Send a chat. Why is this file stuck? What's going on here? And then if someone says, "Oops, we forgot," and they push it forward, or the host pushes it forward. So it gives you that flexibility and reduces a lot of stress, that I would say. If people are running around, I mean, I had a case where, during an actual email inspection, and we had the back room was in a big conference. Well, it's a boardroom, it's a long table, and I was in the inspection room, and my QA person who was managing it literally had to yell at people to leave because people are coming in, what's going on, et cetera, et cetera. And they basically, and someone was offended, and I said, I told management, I'm sorry. And they understood, of course. You need to not distract people that are working on this. Last thing you want to do is send the wrong document or even a bad document, for review. It has real impact on the company for its regulatory or financial or strategic partnerships and things like that. So basically now we want this to be a discussion and Q&A, and people sharing information, experiences and such. Now it's time for discussion, and I just put in here my email. If people have any follow-on questions, feel free to contact me, or if you need advice or looking for context in the field.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Amnon. We do have some questions that have come in, so I'll just moderate these. So one that we just have from the chat that just popped up is, do you have examples of a totally digital company?
No, and that includes large multinationals and smaller companies. I would say that I think it's unfortunate, but there are some large companies, typically contract manufacturers, big CDMOs, are still using paper documents on file. They can see need to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for big expensive systems. So I have to put in a caveat that one can get excellent EQMS systems with broad functionality, or under $50,000, even less. There's some that are really bare bones. So if people have to use Viva, fine, but there's a cost associated with that. There are other options. Viva is an excellent system, and I'm involved in that for many years. So no, I've not seen a fully electronic company. I would have to say that I do know of companies that have fully electronic QMS, which is, again, not difficult to implement. There's some transition, digitizing, but most people have everything already in a SharePoint that then archived documents can move up into the system. I did a migration just a couple of years ago from totally paper-based system into an electronic QMS dot compliance that we use and like. And once you're electronic, you really don't want to go back to paper. I think it's mixed and it's in different areas. But there's still challenges that if you are in an electronic system and there's error or defect, it's much harder to identify it and fix it on the spot than if it's manual. So that's sort of the pros and cons. But I strongly recommend going electronic, but understanding that some people also not as computer adept as others or have a hard time seeing things on a computer, and that has to be taken into account too.
Great, thank you. We also had a comment that came in just for your feedback. Good points on repeating requests slowly. Also, the additional roles of communicator, observer, and additional scribe. It makes for a lot of people in the room, and it's very good if that is allowed. Another
Yeah.
question for you, Amnon, is how do you allocate inspection roles?
Well, it is dependent on, I think, two primary drivers. One is prior experience. People have supported inspections, whether in the inspection room or in the back room. That is good, but it also has to have people with the right capabilities. And for example, a scribe, you need someone who can write quickly, type quickly, and also verbatim, not interpret things. I write things exactly as people say them. So sometimes people come after me after meetings and say, "Oh, Amnon, could I get your notes? Because I know but that's something I developed myself because if I don't write things down, I don't necessarily remember them. So I've been doing that since high school, write very exactly what people are saying. Other people paraphrase that you do not want that. So you want someone who can just type quickly. Typos, not so many typos. At the same time with spell check, it's not a big deal, but a good typist, but also someone who can hear and understand. For example, in a company, we were trying out different people as scribes. It's also, you need more than one, you want backups. And it's also a good opportunity for people developmentally, of career, professionally. And some scribes were just terrible. Other were like brilliant, and they did not have to be from QA or CMC or manufacturing or regulatory. Just people who know how to write things, listen to what people are saying. Some people say they must know the terminology. I don't know. I guess it helps, but at the same time, if people are using acronyms, and if I'm saying so, you ask for the XYZ document. So, like the DMC charter, and I say that's the uh, the data monitoring committee or whatever that acronym is. But definitely speed, slow people. People have to think and ponder, or the write things down is not good for scribing. And in the room, obviously, you need people who don't just freak out and just completely like freeze because it's stressful, especially if things aren't going well. Sometimes inspectors, auditors go on a path that you wish they didn't, and where documents aren't so great, or where things could have been handled better, and now you have to go into descriptions of deviations and such, etc. It's very important that anybody involved, including the SMEs, the people who respond, are people who can think on their feet, people who can prepare with the narratives that you have in your storyboards, and also remember them to be neutral, neutral in the sense that you don't, they say, "Oh, this is terrible." You don't want people saying, "Yes, yes, that was terrible." I mean, then okay, would you want to sign this affidavit that you agree that this was terrible? You have to really be careful. You just say, "Yes, I understand. This is what you said. Yes, we will get you the information." And if you don't have the information, you could say, "There's someone with more experience in that field or knowledge of that area that we can bring in. Not even mentioning names. Let the people who are running the meeting, because you'll say Jim, they'll bring in Jim, but maybe it's actually Jane who's better. So let the people in the back room and the host say, we need Jane, because Jane actually knows how to answer this question.
Thank you. Our next question is, have you seen inspectors willing to use ReadyRoom and confirm document reviews?
Without mentioning specific platforms, the focus here is really on the process, even though, ReadyRoom is gracious enough to host this event for information. I have been in inspections where it was run with an application. But I would say it was run as an application, but people are still giving out paper documents. With my discussions with former FDA people who are FDA investigators, they said that right now, someone had experience of, I think, helping host at least four or more FDA and EMA inspections, and they said for the FDA inspection, nobody wanted paper documents. They didn't even want you to bring like SOPs into the room. As I said, you have a big document you showed on screen, maybe a large format org chart, but or a table, vendor list. They don't want paper documents anymore. She said maybe there are some old-time people there, senior investigators may still want to look at paper forms, but she has not experienced that in the past couple of years.
Okay. Our next one. So this is a wonderful presentation with all the keynotes necessary for hosting and conducting the audit. What is your thought on the use of AI on the hosting of an audit?
Well, that is an interesting comment and very topical right now as people are looking for applications for AI. I'm actually working with someone who's developing AI applications for biopharma, a freelance programmer, but with experience in QA and QMS and such. And in my advice to them is that the AI needs to be built from the ground up to be validatable and have all the appropriate controls and safeguards that you would expect from a QMS, a clinical database, a safety database, etc., doc control system. And a lot of people, I think, who are building these apps, they are programmers and they may be excellent. And you get a list, here are these 30 things critical for you to put together, and they put it together and then it comes back and no, that doesn't work this way. That's not what we wanted. So I think AI can be very beneficial, I would say, in searching and looking for things, because now AI is being implemented in some QMS systems where it will actually search for phrases or like phrases in the documents, in the PDF documents or the rendered documents on file. So you can search not just by keywords, as in training, but you can actually look for which documents it says training in them, because there's training and training. There could be the GXP training, there could be corporate training. And in some cases, companies are, I think, wise enough to actually run the HR, legal, finance training policies through the QMS. But for formulating the response, I'd be very, very concerned. And I think these responses should be formulated by the SMEs. Sometimes it takes more than one with participation of QA and put in your storyboards. So AIs can misinterpret things. Some systems make up stuff, or they paraphrase things, and then you look for the original quotes from the regs or some, and then ultimately it says, well, the exact words are not in that regulatory guidance, but they paraphrase it. Now, the paraphrase is correct. I didn't find it was incorrect, but it made me believe that those actual words were in the regulations. No, it was just describing that those regulations happened to talk about what I was asking. So I'd be very careful with AI in that live inspection situation.
Very
I
good
hope that
point.
answered the question, because people are talking about it a lot now.
Definitely timely. Our next question is, how do we deal with different inspectors who come from the same agency? Sometimes a handful of inspectors come with aggression, while some are easy to deal with. Why are different approaches followed for a similar type of inspection?
Well, I think one question back, maybe that person could respond. Are you talking about US FDA or people from various countries, part of the European Union or MHRA or PMDA from Japan or Anvisa? I would say that in the US, and I've been involved with the PDA, which is a great organization, Parental Drug Association, since the mid 90s. And for years, and under Jana Woodcock was a wonderful, wonderful director of FIBR. She was trying to really put in more consistency among their investigators. And yes, I'd experience with very thoughtful, calm, respectful uh, investigators. And then people have had experience with people who had an agenda or hostile. And unfortunately, and I think that improved over recent years. Now, if you cannot control for individuality, and there's also some agencies, for example, you will never find a hostile or aggressive, let's say, inspector coming in from Japan. But there are other countries where potentially you may find someone. I know MHRA inspectors, especially the more experienced ones, can be very aggressive or, even kind of rude. And but I would say that as long as they have, as long as they have they are not inappropriate, you just have to deal with it and be calm. Be calm. I think that if they're inappropriate in any way that would violate, a company's, code of conduct or for whatever reason, then people can, raise that to FDA, but it would have to be very well documented. So I think most people just accept it, and that is why the people who are hosting have to have, nerves of steel, I suppose, or even if they don't, have to be able to not show if they are alarmed or stressed and keep things calm. So you need people helping run and manage these events who also know how to stay calm and neutral and also help other people stay calm.
Next question is, how do you share electronic controlled documents like SOPs?
Well, if it's, let's give an example, not just a regulatory inspection, but a due diligence audit, which I was in a company and we had due diligence audits that sometimes were multiple auditors over a period of days. And this was done remotely and we shared it. Let's say this is a few years ago. So they had a site and there are different apps that people can share their SharePoint. People can have a site with Box or Dropbox or Ignite, which is also validatable document repository like Box, and you would just upload it there. And another case was, as I mentioned, with thumb drives, and you had to create 3 thumb drives, or more. We had like four people coming in, and literally it took a while to get it done. I mean, things they heated literally because maybe thumb drives, some of them are faster today, but it can take time. So typically it used to be thumb drive, either paper, they take them with them. CD-ROM, people still remember that term, but in one inspection, it was a clinical inspection, and the investigator wanted to review the clinical data. So he had to download this massive, spreadsheet with the clinical data onto a CD-ROM, a DVD, and she took it, reviewed it over the weekend or whatever, or in the hotel. So there are different tools. I think now most people, if they wanted to share electronically, it's best if it goes into a repository somewhere on the web, something that's good, secure.
Great, thank you for that. Our next question starts with, experienced staff is important for successful inspections, but for many SMEs, it's their first inspection experience, and that's more the norm. So what advice would you give to training SMEs and function leads who are new to the process?
Okay. Any small company, usually these are virtual companies, which I don't like the term because obviously we are really here, but in a sense, companies that do not have the manufacturing in-house or large organizations, let's say managing their clinical trials or distributing their product. So my recommendation is to hire a good, experienced consultant. Sometimes these consultants could be much every week. In one case, I had to establish a GCP clinical quality function, which included auditing and inspection hosting. Zero. Done that actually more than one company, startups. And I took the training myself, and I found out that the trainer lived in Massachusetts, so I hired her, a former FDA person, and she helped me set up, all the systems, the SOPs, and also prepare for the inspection. And if you do find someone like that, it's good for someone who's had recent experience with helping host inspections. And example, a person that I like using has had a lot of experience recently, also FDA inspections in other countries. That she helping with that company and had to go and support a FDA inspection in Germany. And it's not always manufacturing. Sometimes it's CROs, sometimes it's labs. So it's finding a good, reliable, good communicator, collaborative person who is more uplifting than sort of a critical downer type person is really critical. I think someone who's going to read behavior inspection without prior experience, it's not book smarts, it's street smarts. And that's why I like doing mock inspections. The goal of companies is to be continuously inspection readiness. Now, that sounds almost tragically comic for a company that's just building its quality system sometimes many years after the fact, which does not happen actually for these GMP in Europe because the QP would not allow a company to make product internally or externally unless there's a full quality system and a qualified certified manufacturer. But in the US, I've noticed some small companies, several I've been with, some reason even phase two, no quality systems. A lot of the early cell therapy companies, they didn't have quality systems and they still approved their product. But I will tell you now that there's no cell therapy or gene therapy company that will be approved if they don't have full appropriate GXP quality systems. That was allowed, life-saving diseases, new technology. That's not allowed anymore. So getting a good consultant, and I know a few really good people that they themselves or their colleagues or people who work for their consultancy can support and help build that expertise and mock inspections, but like real mock inspections, not just all hats off. There's what's called hats on. The inspector, hats off, answer my questions. Yes, and occasionally you could say, wait, hats off. Were we doing that okay? Or what do you think? But it's good to do it hats on and do the hats off discussion after hours or at the end. Otherwise, you're not really getting a full inspection experience with the challenges and the stress that's involved.
Great, thank you. We have a comment and then a question, and they're somewhat related. So one of the attendees has said, just in terms of the process, I'm used to having a clean computer from IT and downloading the requested documents for the inspectors to review. And then the question that we have is, what is your approach to staging documents?
Okay. Well, I just want to comment that having a kiosk, whatever laptop is a good idea. I've just seen the challenges that if the inspector needs to use that computer to potentially also access documents, or if you want to use it to present things in the inspection room, it doesn't always work. So it's very important that I'm not saying it's not possible, but different companies, especially smaller companies, may have different levels of system integration. And sometimes that kiosk laptop, so you don't bring your own laptop in, is more challenging than you think. So if that worked well for you, that's great. But not everybody has the onboard in-house IT support to make sure it actually works, or if there's a glitch. It's kind of embarrassing if you have to say, well, we have to go to the old way now. And I'm sorry, what was the second half of that Tracy or Denise?
What is your approach to staging documents?
Well, I think that if you're doing it electronically, I don't think it's a problem. What I do think is that the storyboards that are developed to let's say how we managed our clinical data. You have a storyboard and you have a flow chart because actually FDA requests for a flow chart now up front, which is a good idea because otherwise they get confused because not everybody has systems that are so clear or can explain it that well. You basically stage the typical core documents. So if you have, for example, an EQMS, and you know that they will want to look at your SOPs on GXP training, batch record review, management of clinical trials, et cetera, you can already stage them internally. You can put them in a SharePoint folder or again, whatever repository you're using, and then they are ready. And you could then just put subfolders of GCP, GMP, GLP, if there's an aspect of, preclinical, non-clinical testing or tox testing that needs to be there. CMC, if it's a PAI audit, obviously CMC, you need everything from how you developed your methods and your processes, change control, etc. So people know what is typically inspection, and actually there are inspection guides. So for CMC inspections, there's a very good, what's called the BIMO, Biological Monitoring Division guide that actually says this is what you as a FDA investigator should look at. So you make sure that you have documents and storyboards when necessary to respond to questions in those areas and stage those documents. There's a lot of information out there, whether in guidance or from prior experience, which would have even lists of recommended documents to have, let's say from the GMP domain, but I could just think at the top of my head. You have facility, temperature control, and environmental control. If it's an aseptic facility, sterilization, sanitization, cleaning of equipment, analytical labs, analytical methods, etc. So I think it's not difficult to get those lists. The BIMO inspection guide, and it was just updated by FDA recently, is really good for the GCP safety related inspections and plenty of other guidance, professional guidance out there that you could find. And if you have a specific in your company, a technology that's different, it's almost certain they'll want to talk about that, especially if it's something novel and interesting, because they want to make sure it's being done properly, but also the FDA people want to learn this novel technology. And so it works both ways. So hopefully that answered the question there.
Can I ask the rest of the attendees if they're comfortable to share what their approach to staging documents is? Because I would love to learn how other people are doing it. I'll ask you to type in the chat if you are comfortable sharing, and maybe while you're doing that, I'll just kind of share that we see different approaches to sharing, right, or to staging with our Ready Room customers. Some people stage a lot. Some stage a lot and then they're kind of sorry that they did for various reasons, especially with GCP inspections. You can have like 30,000 documents in your average TMF repository, and that it doesn't even include things like SOPs or org charts or CVs or safety documents or all of the other things that get asked for that aren't actually hard documents. So just curious if anyone else has any information to share about how they approach staging.
All right, we did have one come through. So recently for an inspection, we staged electronically in Ready Room and then also prepared a binder for those standard frequently requested documents.
So
Yes, and if we're talking about the Ready Room specifically, yes, we stage the documents first, and then we stage the ones we thought most likely to be requested in Ready Room, but there was a lot of other things we had to put in real time.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Our next question, and feel free, attendees, to, if you want to share on that last topic, please feel free, and I can read those out as they come in. But our next question in the meantime is, Is there a GVP guidance from the FDA?
I think I need to understand what you mean by GVP guidance, because there are guidances about pharmacovigilance, and there's also a description about what's expected for patient safety, monitoring in clinical trials, reporting of serious adverse events, etc. Very, very detailed, spelled out. And there are other guidances that maybe add information, knowledge, expectations. I don't know if there's a specific inspection guide just for GVP, but that is usually considered part of a BIMO inspection, and there is always a section related to management of patient safety and how's that done, and protocol deviations and things like that.
The clarification is this would be similar to the BIMO guidance.
Well, BIMO, yes. So some people call
Sorry.
it BMO, but I think the FDA people call it BIMO. Here's the thing. People know what the term CAPA is, corrective action, preventive action. Where does that reside among the FDA regulations? It resides with the CDRH regulations for medical devices. And actually, Joe Chuckles, who was my boss at Amgen when I was in corporate quality, helped write that as a consultant to FDA because he had helped write it for the ISO 9000, which everybody knows about. And but the point is, even though it's in CDRH, it can be applied everywhere. So it applies also to biologics and drugs and everything else. The BIMO inspection was put in because GMPs were the first good practice that FDA developed, starting in the 70s when the terminology was used and then refined, etc. Then there was GLP because there were major gaps with these labs doing studies, terrible gaps with data and fraud and treatment of animals and improper, basically running of these studies. GCP came later, good clinical practice as a terminology. And so the BIMO guide is really the best guide for that. I'm glad it's been updated. FDA also does not update regulations very frequently. There's even terminology that's used. If everybody knows, all communications from FDA's after inspection will say if there are gaps, that is responsibility of the quality unit. That's stuck. It's stuck. And then the quality unit gets blamed. But there's so many, both guidance, United States guidance, and FDA documents that it is management's responsibility, but it's stuck. And I asked one of the very experienced people, why is it there? He said, it is there because that is the template. And no one is going to ask for a budget and people to change the template because, yes, he agrees it would be better if it wasn't there. So everything always starts, if there are gaps, responsibility of the quality unit. What they really mean is who hired, who resourced, and who allowed the quality unit to do the job, unless the quality unit screwed up on their QMS or something. So there are things out there. It's just you will not find as a detailed guide from FDA. There are other training manuals and guides. I would just look under FDA inspection manuals and see what you can find.
So I did post a link. I was trying to post a link to the downloaded PADE BIMO guidance, but I don't think it posted correctly. So I just posted a link to the page at FDA with all of their guidance manuals. So there is one for post-marketing PV, but the clinical PV is with the sponsors and CROs.
Yes, and I do want to mention something here that's very, very important, is that basically pharmacovigilance is a term that should be used for commercial product. And I even had once with a FDA person, tell me, oh, that patient safety, but pharmacovigilance. It has migrated into the clinical world. People use PV. There are rules against PV. There are rules in PV that are not required in clinical. In clinical cases, almost all safety issues are monitored and reported by the clinical site. And from there through the clinical process for resolution and reporting, etc. Because pharmacovigilance includes external activities and external monitoring and responding to complainants and etc. etc. So yeah, but thank you. The list. I mean, yes. I mean that is for bioresearch, but it does not cover like manufacturing so much, but it would cover. Yes, this is great. Thank you for the link.
Great. We have two more responses from the topic of staging. So one attendee says recently for an FDA inspection of the BABE facility, we staged the documents in the physical files, and the inspectors were also to recreate the study, and we were through without any 483 being issued. And then the next person has said regarding staging of the documents for PAI related to FDA, I use the BMO guidance. It needs to be translated to an Excel sheet and work cross-functionally to train them. And it takes about 4 to 6 months of effort for the inspection readiness. It should not be planned strategically with the NDA submission timelines.
Yes, it should be planned strategically, absolutely. And that's also why it's good to have mock inspections periodically to see how we're doing. Do we have the right people? And did we stage the documents right? And yes, it's interesting. Again, I think some of the FDA investigators would still be happy with paper documents, but it really varies. And today, what I'm informed, you really have no idea what level of experience you're going to get in an inspection.
We have somebody who's just asking a clarifying question. So they've said, just to confirm, is there any specific guidance for the post-marketing inspection of pharmacovigilance inspection?
I mean, there are specific regulations, and I believe that there was in that list, in that link that was opened. If you want to share that, I mean, I actually had it opened a second ago.
It is there. It's called Post-Marketing Adverse Drug Experience Reporting Inspections. It's a BIMO guidance. Or not a BIMO guidance, but it's a BIMO. Those BIMO guidelines are guidelines
Manual.
for the inspector, right? So it's not for us, but it's for the inspector. But we can use them to see what the inspector is going to ask us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the point. They published it so that people would have some idea. I'm trying to share the screen here. So this is the link.
There you go.
So there are various PDFs here.
Right. On the same line, we have a question. Do you recommend having a mock inspection for post-marketing PV inspection?
Yes, I recommend having a mock inspection for any before any inspection, unless the company is well experienced. But for example, let's say you've only had GMP inspections, you've never had a IMO inspection, definitely do a mock inspection. If there's one specific for PV, then there's got to be a reason for it. And again, it's not always a negative reason, but it could be because of prior gaps. It could be because of challenges in a certain type of disease state or type of device. I would definitely recommend doing a mock inspection. Now, if you're going to do it for 1 day or 3 days, I think it depends on the level of experience at the site and what the concerns are. And if it's some specific areas that you know they'll want to discuss, you can focus on that. But I think it's well advisable to do mock inspections prior, prior to a real inspection.
Wonderful. Well, this brings us pretty much to the end of our time here this morning. So maybe Denise, I can hand it over to you to wrap up.
Sure. Thank you so much, Amnon, for your words today. It was really great to hear about inspections past, present, and future. And thank you, everyone else, for your attendance today and for sharing. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, everybody. And as I said, it was very good. Appreciate the opportunity. And if people have any follow-on questions, feel free. Will we have access to this chat though, Tracy? Just because it's got some links and stuff.
Yes, I will send that out.
That would be helpful.
You bet. I'll send that out to
Very
everyone.
Good. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for attending.
Thanks, everyone. We will follow up with a recording and with the questions for everyone as well. So thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day.